I was basically saying that to them, like, you know, it's kind of like one thing to stay booked out, but it's another to actually get your team support around that. And so that's what we wanted to talk about today, was kind of like how my team has helped me to do that. I think that a lot of the clients I work with that are like growing, scaling, going to like 6 figures, multiple 6 figures and beyond, like this becomes a really hard thing where they feel like they still have to shoulder the burden of everything. And I think that that is one thing we've done like super, super well, is making sure the team helps to build the business versus that the team just helps to run the business. I think that's a very different thing. Does that resonate?
Yeah, 100%.
You picking up what I'm putting
Well,
down?
and I think that I would love to talk about like what that looks like differently and how that has kind of evolved too. Because like the way that the team has been part of your business today is totally different than like 3 years ago, right? And so I think that we'll definitely talk about that too.
So I think for me, like the number one way that I've built my business and stayed booked in general, with team or without really, is building relationships and engaging online. Like content and relationships, which are one and the same, have always been, ooh, I'm not used to this setup here, have always been the thing that I have used since day one. And what I think is really helpful about that is that when I brought team on, I already knew what like my thing was. And I think that's so helpful. If you're in the online space, obviously content's a really big driver of that. But like I have some clients that, you know, just operate off referrals or whatever. And so you just have to know what your thing is so your team can actually support you in that. So I would love to know, if you're listening, like what's your thing in your business that books you or that keeps you getting clients? Like, is it content? Is it relationship building? Is it referrals? Is it like email marketing? Whatever it is for you. Like if you know that, it's so much easier for a team to help you build your business. If you don't know that, it's so hard to bring a team on that's going to help you scale that.
Well, and I think that like all of those are basically like different ways of building relationships with people, right? Like even, you know, content or email marketing, or I mean, even if it's like a little bit more reserved where you're working on like SEO or something, where it's not like more of like that interaction piece, but you're still working on building that relationship with your ideal audience, right? And so knowing what your avenue of relationship building is. And for you, I think it has always been content, right? And so like knowing what that looks like and knowing how to bring in your team so that they can help you continue to grow that, right?
Exactly. And like sorry, I have to plug my phone in, you guys. I'm a hot fucking mess today. You just like throw me off my game even a little bit and I'm just messy. But hey, Barbs. But the phone is now plugged in, I think. Yeah. But for me, like I've used the same thing almost since day one. Like Megan said, it's always been content. And so when you repeatedly use the same thing, you can start building systems and structures around that to scale it. And you get better and better and better at getting booked from it. Like the number one thing I see people do wrong in this online space is jump from thing to thing. Like they focus on their group or email or some content and then some straight ads and then some, you know, like, what am I trying to say? Like paid traffic, organic traffic, like everything's all over the place. And it makes it so difficult, not only for you to know how you're getting booked, but for you to know how to get help getting booked and for you to stay booked. Like the reason I have stayed booked for so long is because I fucking know what works and I get better and better and better at it. Right? And the reason you wouldn't stay booked is because you're trying so many things, it's hard to ever get better at any of them.
Yeah, and it's really hard to like bring your team into that too. Like from a team perspective, like I can't help you if I don't know what you're doing. Or like if you're jumping from strategy to strategy to strategy, it's so much more beneficial to be able to like choose one thing, get really, really good at that thing. And like, sure, like obviously in 3.5 years or 3 years, whatever, like we built on from what we started with, but it was making sure that the first thing that we were doing was operating like a well-oiled machine before adding on a ton of other things on top of it.
Rita says, my two favorite people right now on my screen.
Ah,
Way to end a long day. Thank you, Rita. Hi, Jen. Hi, Lorianne.
yeah.
This is a fun little group we got going here. I'm feeling it. Okay, if you guys are listening, tell me what your thing is. Like, again, I said relationships, but to Megan's point, really it was content. All strategies are kind of aimed at building relationships. For me, it's always been content. I'm dying today. But I would love to know, if you're listening, what yours has been. So anyway, like, our point is do something, do it well, get better and better at it. If you do that, you're going to collect so much data and learn so much. And then you're going to be able to give that data to your team so they can help you create structure around it, right? So Megan, let's talk about when you first started with me. What did that look like? And maybe like walk them through the process. So when you first started with me,
okay,
I'll share my memory and you can share yours. Mine is a little embarrassing, but on the theme of me being a hot mess today, let's just roll with it. I think I had gone through 4 VAs prior to hiring Megan, and I'm maybe being conservative if I'm saying 4. And it was so frustrating for me at the time because literally my MBA concentration was leadership. So I was like, why the actual fuck is this so hard? And I was just really having a hard time having someone come in and help me take what was working and build it and replicate it. And I was really certain about what I needed. And so I just didn't feel like I was getting anybody that was like getting on the same page with me with that. And I felt like I was at a point where I was like, this shouldn't be that hard because I know what's working. Like, I was mostly booked, I think, when we started to work together. And that's why I needed a VA so bad. So the problem was I was just hiring really, really fast because I was a little desperate. Like, I was just like, I just need help. I'm like really full and I could use some help. But then Megan came in, and then Megan, you can kind of like tell the story from there. She bravely came in even though she knew I had got
I also feel like part of that like didn't scare me off because I knew you before that. So I was like, okay, like I feel like we'll be okay because you and I had already had established a relationship where like if you were the problem, like if you were just a complete hot mess, I could have been able to tell you like you need to get your shit together. And it was totally fine.
You're actually crazy. I think
you
I feel like I would have taken that well.
would have actually. But I feel like, so when I came onto the team, it was from my perspective, and listen, like Lacey was my very first client, like I had never done any of this before. And so it was all kind of new to me at that time, but it was just so easy, for lack of a better term, like it was just so easy to be able to be kind of thrown into the back end of your business because you already were so clear on what you were doing and what was working, and it just needed to continue to happen consistently and continue to get expanded on, where it was like I think you were like either completely booked or almost booked by the time we started to work together. So it was like you just like didn't have the capacity to do the same stuff that you had been doing when you didn't have any clients, right? And so I feel like that's where team can really be so beneficial, where I know that you and I have talked about this quite a bit before, but like it's totally cool to be the one doing everything at the beginning and to build and like be the one to kind of like figure out what works and to be the one doing like writing all your content, posting all your content, engaging on social media, like doing all of the things. But at a certain point, in order to continue to grow and not become insane, you have to like be able to bring a team on and allow them to, help. And it's just so much easier when you have that clarity of what your goal is, what you're doing, what the strategy is, so that they can kind of like come into that very easily and seamlessly.
I really think, like, I cannot stress this enough. Like, if you're listening to this and you are like at the very beginning and just want to get booked, or you're like starting to bring on a team, or you're like past that and scaling, is like, if you know what fundamentally gets you sales and makes you money in your business, your team will always make you money. Well, if you put them on those tasks is a better way to say it. But like, if you are not sure what's really working or what's not working in your business and you bring on a team, reliably, you and your team will be frustrated and you will feel like you're spending and not making. Like, I know for sure that Megan and everyone on my team makes me money because I know what makes money in my business. And I know that we put their attention on those things, right? And so Megan and I spend a lot of our time now being like, is this a thing that like drives the business forward or creates more sales, or is this not a thing? And that was a question that like you could be asking from day one, team or not, is like, is this a thing that like gets me booked? Like, that was so my focus at the beginning. Like, I was never doing anything that wasn't like, is this a thing that gets me clients? Like, is updating this like back end shit on my website a thing that gets me clients? No, it waits. Is anything other than putting out great content and building relationships, for me, nothing other than that was important, and it's what got me clients. And so when I brought a team on, I was like, yo, what gets us clients is content, so how you gonna help me get more of it out there, right? And I was still writing all of it, but my team was helping put it places, organize it, save it, get it places, and that made such a difference because the way Megan and I look at content in my business is it's literally like collateral. Like, if we had a product-based business and we had whatever, we were selling candles, we had 150 candles, that's how we would look at it. Like, it's our like collateral, like it's our, what's the word? Why am I blanking? If we had products, what would
like
it be
inventory?
called? I can't.
Is that
Inventory. Yep. Sure. Yep, that's the word. You know what I mean? Like, that's how valuable it is because we know it's the thing that makes us money, just like candles would be the thing that makes us money, right? Megan, say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and I think that like one of the things that is really I guess like unique and in the online space versus like a physical product with content, it is something that can like
Hi,
uh
Heather.
it's kind of like an always like evolving thing, right? Where like you can write something once and that one piece of content can be repurposed and refined and used elsewhere. And it's something that it's not just like, okay, I wrote it, it's done, it's out there, forget about it, right? It's something that we have gotten from the very beginning of us working together. We've gotten super strategic about like everything that you create is saved, is somehow thought of how else can we use this? How can we repurpose this? Where else can we use it? Is it going into a funnel? Is it going into a paid product? Is it going into, client resources? Is it, whatever it is, where there's always some other use for everything that you do. And I think that that's just like the beauty of content, no matter what, whether you're doing live videos or whether you're creating a challenge or just like writing blog posts or whatever that is, like that has just so much more use. And that's one of the things that you and I have just always been very strategic about, making sure that like it's always continued to be used over and over and over.
I so agree with that. Lorianne says hi, Lauren. Lorianne says hers is doing lives and live events. Heather says this is exactly what she's looking to hire for right now, so she might need to chat with you. But exactly, like, and you could apply this to anything else. Like, if your thing isn't content and your thing is like referrals, right? Your team would be helping to figure out like how to get more referrals, how to reach out to your clients more, how to create a better referral system, how to funnel people into that more, how to give them more touch points around giving you referrals, all that kind of stuff. Like, it's like you have to know what your thing that works is, and then you have to be able to help your team apply that. And that's how you will stay full. If you know what works, this is what I see people do all the time. Megan, you could probably speak to this very strongly. on the back end, what I see people do all the time is they think they know what works to get booked. So they'll do it, it'll work, and then they'll bring a team on and they'll want their team to do totally other things. Like, okay, I know I got booked off of putting out great content in my Facebook group. So like, whatever, I'll figure that out, no big deal. Can you get on Pinterest for me and also do these other 30 things and maybe start running ads and maybe do all this other stuff? And it's like, but like, you already know what's working. Let your team help you with what's working first and then expand. If you're hiring a team to do other stuff that you haven't tested at all yet, they're not going to make you money right away. Just like you posting on Facebook the first day you started your business doesn't usually make you money right away.
And I think that, like, kind of going off of that, I feel like that's kind of a surefire way to have like a ton of frustration on both ends, right? Like, if you hire someone and you're like, cool, I'm just gonna hire you to like experiment with Pinterest or something, and then you don't see a return on that investment, you're gonna start to think like, oh, this isn't a good investment, or this isn't a good VA, or maybe I just shouldn't have hired a team member. Maybe I'm not ready for that yet. Maybe I should just go back to blah, 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 right? And I think that you can just like start to create so many stories in your head that are not true. Like, that's actually not what's happening here. It's that you haven't given, you're passing something off that you haven't like validated the idea for, right? And so if you have something that you like, that you know works, that's also how you build trust with your team too, right? Where like, if you can bring them into something you know works, help teach them like, this is why this is how it works, this is why it works, this is what's important around this, and you know, kind of start to build that. It builds your trust in them, it builds their trust in you, and it just creates just overall kind of a, I think, better relationship with your team members, because you're actually bringing them into the business a little bit more and into the team, rather than just like, I need you to like figure this out, and if it doesn't work, then I'm just gonna like give up on it, you know?
I think that's so true. And I feel like Megan and I definitely experiment with stuff now, but we have the foundation laid. Like, we know exactly what to do to keep my masterminds and one-on-one and like my DIY product selling. Like, we know what to do to make all three of those things happen, right? And so in that, now we can set aside time where we'll be like, okay, let's dedicate 5 hours of this month to experimenting on this, or to playing with this, or to growing this, or whatever, because we know we have a foundation that makes us money. And so then we have room to play. And I think that that's something else people miss so much in the like staying booked out, is like, have your team do what works, so that then you have enough resources and you've resourced yourself with enough ease and enough money and enough clients and enough yeses to leverage that and be like, we can blow 5 hours this month on this and it doesn't fucking matter. You know what I mean? We're like, if you're worried, if you're like, I don't want to blow 10 hours this month, like I need that 10 hours to make me money, have them do what works. Do not have them experiment.
100%. Right? And I think that like, one of the things with that too is you never want to experiment at the detriment of what works, right? We're never like, if let's say like you didn't want to like add
blow my nose. Okay.
Let's say you didn't want to add like extra hours with your team just to experiment, right? And you wanted to like find extra hours. The more that you do something, typically when you streamline those processes, the time it takes is going to become less and less, right? We're like, we have streamlined our systems around content like insanely, right? We're like, it does not take as long as it used to do the same things. And it's just kind of on autopilot. We're like, we have created space for other things to utilize that time for, you know, experimenting. But like, experimenting is never, it's always like an extra thing. It's not ever like taking away from the like absolute non-negotiable activities that are going to make you money.
I love that. I couldn't agree with that more. Hey, Latrelli, she says she's new to the group and loving all this great information. Good. But I so agree with that. Like this, I mean, even my clients that don't have teams yet, that's what I'm telling them is like, do one thing, do it really well, shrink the time it takes, then add. And this is applicable to your team too. It's like literally how you know your team will always make you money versus having your team be a monetary drain, right? And so my team like has basically, to like get specific, since Megan started with me that long time ago when I had fired 4 VAs, I'm sure one of them probably fired me too. I would have to think about that. But anyway, like since that time, their number one goal has been figuring out how to take the collateral of content that we have, or like inventory, and literally create a content inventory, create a content repurposing process. Make sure that everything I do goes out to multiple places, multiple times. Make sure that we're selling as much as we need to be selling in our content, that we're promoting everything we want to be promoting. Like, we have gotten so lasered in, but like, to be clear, that has happened over 3.5 years. But like Megan said, now it's so fast and so seamless. What are you laughing at? Oh no, what? What are you laughing at? Did you go away now? Hello? I can't hear you. I can't hear you at all. You're like muted. What? Okay, I can't hear Megan. So until we can hear Megan, I'll just keep talking because I'm good at that. But it's booked out is because, oh, Megan left, is because we've gotten so good at that process and we can repeat it over and over and we know what works and we've learned what works more and more and more. And when you can do that, everything gets easier, right? It's easy to stay booked out. It's fun to try new things. It's like when we did literally and we added like all this, time for podcasting and stuff, we added very few hours to the team's time because we already have really good systems and we knew we could shrink it and make it fit. Does that make sense? Claire says, how many one-on-ones can you serve at a time comfortably? It depends. So right now I have 2 masterminds. Some of them are for client only. I have one-on-one clients, and so I have like a different amount of touch points for people at different times. But I would say I usually have anywhere between 12 and 14 one-on-one clients at a time. Yeah, I can invite you back. But it just depends. That's what works for me because I'm so one-on-one focused. But it just totally depends. Megan, it's so weird. It's like not letting me now. I'm so sorry, you guys. This is so fucking annoying. Bring Megan on camera. I did it. Thank you, God. So that is really a piece that I would say has been so foundational, and I know how much we're going to make off those one-on-one clients, so I know what is worth giving to the team or what we can afford to pay team and how we can continue to increase our revenue and pay team more. Hi, Megan.
Hi, my phone.
Okay, good.
Time on Facebook was up.
Oh my God, that's why you were laughing. That's so funny. Your phone was like, get that app off Facebook. That's hysterical. I love that you have that. People are going to want to know what that is.
It's something on iPhone. I don't remember. It was in my settings. I have it set to like limit me to 15 minutes a day.
Genius. So what I was just saying is basically how like once you know that your team can help you book out and you can stay booked out and like relatively, I mean, my one-on-one income is scalable now based on like what my clients make, but I know baseline what I'm going to make off my one-on-one. And so I know how much I can afford to pay team, and I know how team helps me continue to generate those. And so it feels like this really seamless thing where I'm never like over investing and I'm always getting the results. What's your perspective on that, Megan?
Yeah, and I think that like it just, especially I would say within the past 2 years, it has just felt like such a streamlined thing where like it took
Yeah.
us probably like a year and a half to really like figure out exactly what those processes were and what that looked like. And I think that, because we were so clear on like what the goal is and what the strategy is to get there, the kind of like how exactly that looked, it took us a little while to get there, but we were able to really like refine those processes. Where now, like, I think that everything just feels like the easiest thing, right? Where like
Yeah.
you can, at this point, like you can, have an idea to like do a challenge starting tomorrow, and we'd be like, cool, we know exactly what to do, we know exactly what needs to get like set up around that.
Yep.
And like it just, because we have been able to build that for how many years and create like a repeatable process, and like whatever that looks like for your individual business, like even if it was like referrals or something like that, where like it, when you are working something that works, you are repeating the same process, and so you are going to be refining it and just making it easier and easier and easier to just continue to making that work. Does that make sense?
I literally couldn't agree more. And what I want to stress so much from this, and I think like Megan is so, so on point with what she's saying, which is like, you have to be the fucking CEO of your business and know what works. I see that happen so often when people bring on teams. They're like, hi, come on and like do my whole business. Like, figure out my content shit and figure out how to do this and figure out this. And it's like, no, like the reason my team has helped me stay booked is because I figured out what works, and then they help me systematize excuse me, and scale that. And then I have to stick to that to a certain extent. Like if I was changing my mind on how I wanted to do shit every 2 days, Megan's team could not systematize and scale that with me. Like it would not be possible. So you have to be the CEO and like actually know what makes sales in your business so team can help you make sales. You have to be the CEO and be willing to stick to a process so team can actually help you build a process, and like not put that on them. Like I've never once been like, Megan, I don't know how to get clients to fill this mastermind. Can you like help me figure out a process for that? I'm like, here's what fills masterminds. Let's do this. And Megan is excellent at being like, cool, here's how we're going to build it out. How we're going to scale it. Here's how we're going to make it faster. And it like looks like us both working together in that capacity versus like me being like too busy to take the CEO role. And I think that that's a really big thing for a lot of business owners.
100%. And I think that like ultimately, like you can't really, no one else is going to be in the CEO role, right? And like you can't
Yeah.
operate from the stance of like someone needs to tell me what to do kind of thing, because like no one knows your business better than you do. And so like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, you can definitely hire team members that like know tech stuff better than you, or who can, who know ads, and you don't want to actually like know how to figure all the things out in admin. You know
Yes.
what I mean? Where like there's things that like you definitely want to be able to hire people who are experts in their field, and like you can stay the expert in yours. But ultimately, like you are the CEO who is making the decisions of how the business grows.
So let's talk about this like really specifically with one topic, which is content repurposing, because I think that's like one we've used the most. Oh,
Mm.
good. Nico says this is so what you need to hear right now. I love it when that
Yay.
happens. So with content writing, repurposing, all that kind of stuff, when Megan came into my business, I already had a system. I posted in other groups. I emailed my list once a week. I wrote once a week. I had my whole content plan. If you guys don't know that, it consists of like themes and categories, so I knew what I was talking about each week. Like I had my whole system set up for like what I knew I need to make happen. So the first step when Megan came in my business was just her taking that system and being like, okay, you're still gonna write. I'm gonna take the rest of that system and we're gonna start implementing it. And then as that grew, what we've continued to do is be like, okay, so like I know a thing all I have said to them is like, okay, so now I want to make sure we're also putting out 3 posts about DIY products a week. How do we incorporate that into the system we already have? I don't necessarily know anymore, like on a day-to-day basis, like how those parts move, but I'm always bringing the vision, and Megan's always putting it into the system we already have. And I think that's really important, where I'm not expecting Megan to come to me and go, hey, have you thought that maybe we should do some posts for DIY products? Certainly she has ideas and we'll bring that. I'm not trying to discount that, but like, that's my fucking job, right? Her job is to be like, cool, here, let me fit it into the system and process we already have and make it faster, easier, and more scalable. And when we can come together on that, shit moves fast. So Megan, say a little bit about the content repurposing from your end, where like you kind of started with just my system and then you've expanded it as we've expanded.
Yeah, I think that like ultimately it kind of came down to, you know, like you would end up being the bottleneck at different points, right? Where like at first it was just like getting the content out there, like sending the emails, posting the posts, etc. So like that was kind of the first step of like,
yep,
that's the part of the system that we started with, right? And then it was like actually like because we have always created like a content inventory, so like actually repurposing old content. So it wasn't necessarily that you were writing from scratch new content every single week, because
yep,
it was like, I think it got to a point where it was like you were doing it like Sunday nights or something like that. And it was like, maybe we should like streamline this a little bit so you're not spending Sunday nights like
also,
writing
I think
content.
You were like, you have 125 blog posts, so maybe we could just reuse some of them. I was like, that sounds great.
Yeah. And so it was basically like taking that and then just like you would just like be able to refine it, where instead of taking an hour to write the content or something, it would take you like 15 minutes to just actually go through, right? And so it was like almost like at every point there ended up being like a new sticking point, that it was, you know, either taking you too long, or it wasn't, you know, it was like not ended up being like too much energy, or like wasn't really a good, you know, whatever it was, right? Yep. And so I think that, you know, it
or like we realized we weren't sharing a certain thing enough or whatever.
Yes. And so ultimately too, I think it was like one of those things where we started to also see how much content you had, because you had been creating it from like every single week for like a year or something. And I was like, this is all really good content. Let's just like go back through it and let's make sure that we're like, you know, taking other things that you've already created and, you know, actually like putting them into some type of rotation, that we're selling the DIY products regularly. We are, you know, and it's not just like on your website like for people to stumble upon. We're actually talking about them and putting them out there and stuff like that. So it's almost like we just built onto it piece by piece by piece.
Another piece to remember there is like, as my time got freed up in that way, I was able to put it toward higher and higher level things. So then I was able to be like, okay, so I don't have to write every week anymore and take up, you know, a couple hours of my time doing that. Well, what does that time go to? It either goes to another client where I can make more money, or it goes to another thing that I can use as like a marketing tool. So like, you know, it can go to my podcast. It can go to getting on live stream more. Like, there was a point where it was like hard for me to get on live stream once a week because I was like balancing that with writing. And now it's like I always have time to get on live stream multiple times a week, because that foundational content is going out. So it creates room and space to create higher and higher level content. But like, we've made sure that that worked together and flowed together, where it wasn't like I'm just going to do all the things and then hopefully team will catch up. In fact, Megan and I are literally doing a consult together for one of my clients next week, who kind of feels like that, like who just like did all the things and team hasn't caught up. And we're like kind of going in to be like, cool, let's catch your team up and like streamline this. Because that's what can happen. Like, we literally did it systematically. Like, cool, we're taking that off Lacey's plate. Lacey's going to commit to live stream once a week. Cool, we're taking that off Lacey's plate. Lacey's going to commit to the podcast. Cool, we're taking that off. Lacey's going to commit to, you know, writing a new opt-in more often, whatever it is. But like, it's been really systematic in that way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is also like really good from a team's perspective too, because it's not like you're just like, here's all the things and just like go for it. You're not like overwhelming your team, because I think that a lot of times even the most capable team members get overwhelmed when it's just like, blah, 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 like just thrown at you without, like it's easier to kind of start building foundation and build off of that
Yeah.
step by step rather than just like chaotic, like I need you to do all the things and figure it out and create a process and do this and do this and that.
Kate says this live stream is my love language right now.
Aww.
So good. I think that people also think that Megan and I, like, I'm getting off on a tangent here and then I'm going to wrap it right back around and we're going to wrap it up here. But I think people also think Megan and I must talk like multiple times a day, every day or something like that. And like, we talk, I mean, we text, we're like friends, but like probably about business stuff. Sometimes we'll even like go almost a week without needing to. I mean, during certain times, like obviously we have little questions for each other here or there, but like because we've done it so systematically and put these processes in, like nothing feels like a fire or an emergency. If you watched our live stream that we did about like the rules we have in our business, one of the rules is nothing is an emergency. The reason nothing is an emergency is because we have the systems. Like Megan knows what she's doing. I know what I'm doing. Nobody's like, what are you doing today? Do I need to do this? Who's doing this? What about this? Also that, like, it never rolls like that because it's systematic, right?
100%. And I think that like it becomes something where, because I think that we have calls like every other week or something like that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that is almost like just to maintain like that connection point, right? We're like,
totally.
So many times we're just almost like going over things that, you know, we've already kind of touched on, or just like figuring out smaller details on or something like that, because we just have these systems set up where it doesn't need a lot of like constant touch points.
Totally. So yeah, I think like to summarize, the way I've stayed booked out is definitely through knowing what my thing was. It was totally content. Through bringing a team on and systematically scaling my ability to put out more content and or take on more clients. Always making sure the team helped me make that foundational money so that we could then play with and experiment with more, but never making it so that like I was focused on one thing that worked and team was focused on another. Like figure out what works and build from that and build systems around that and get better and faster and simpler at doing that. Like I really feel like that's what we've done with content, and it's why my business works so well and why nothing's an emergency. I've been asking Megan for years to make some of this stuff templated, like legit years. I love you, Megan, but it's true. And Megan has now made some of our content repurposing stuff templated. So if you want that and you're like listening to us drone on about having a system, we will just give you our system. It's pretty fucking well oiled, if I do say so myself. But Megan is a little particular about what template she will share. This happens to be one of them. So Megan, tell them a little bit about that if they want to grab that.
Yeah. So it's actually a bundle. So Lacey was talking earlier about the content planning party. Because basically ultimately the whole thing has been like planning out content and being able to repurpose it and having a plan and a system for both of those, right? So we put together a bundle that is the content planning party that helps you actually map out like what are your content categories and topics, and you know, when are you talking about each, and lenses that you're going through with all of those, yada yada. Then it also includes, Lacey and I did a workshop back in February, I believe, that was all about repurposing content and going super deeper deeper into into our repurposing process and like exactly what that looks like, and you know, just all the details of that. So we put up the replay for that workshop, as well as templates for spreadsheets that we use, Trello boards that we use, that basically maps out exactly, you know, what it looks like on the back end. So all of that has been bundled together, and it is available at alituplife.com/content bundle. If y'all are interested in basically, if y'all are interested in essentially just like, learning a little bit more specifically what our content planning and repurposing process looks like and getting some of the templates that you can just copy into and customize for your business.
I also have other exciting news, which is that Megan is going to be coming on live with me more, like at least once a month probably. Just because I feel like it's so valuable for you guys to hear us talk about things. Like even one takeaway from today that we like didn't really get to dive into, we can dive into another time, but it's like I was Megan's first client. She said that earlier. And I think that's really important because I think that sometimes it's easy to like look at our relationship and be like, oh, I just like need that. Like I need that. And we've like put so much work into building this relationship, this business, and all of the systems behind the scenes, all of the relationships on the front end. And so really just want Megan to be part of the conversation in this group more around that because I think she has so much insight to provide and like can really help us to see even the bigger picture. Obviously I'm going to still share value all the time, but like I think this will give even more perspective. You guys know that I'm obsessed with like the really what's happening behind the scenes kind of shit. That's what my whole business and podcast is around. So this is just another aim at that. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I want to hear this from Megan, or I want to hear you guys talk about this, or I want to hear this process, just put it in the comments because she'll be on at least once a month and we'll go through those. So that's that. Megan, thank you for being here. Thank you for making a template. Thank you for coming on live. I know that this is like not your wheelhouse, and I'm just so fucking grateful that you're willing to do that to serve all of us. Like, guys, give her love because seriously, like Megan doesn't have to do this shit. Like she's booked out. She doesn't need clients. She's just basically doing this to serve all of you and because she cares about a lit up life and our mission. So love you, Megan.
I love you. All right. Thanks so much.
Bye, guys. Have a good week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.